And welcome to the show. You're listening to Scott and Shane here on Prepper Talk Radio, here on this wonderful Friday afternoon in Salt Lake City, Utah. And
you're listening to Shane and Scott.
Shane and Scott. Well,
I like to shake it up a little bit.
I don't like to think of myself first. I like to
I know
think
you're
of others first.
You're too kind. That's why we're doing this radio show, because we're too kind.
You could be right.
If we were selfish,
we
would be doing something else. But here's the cool thing: today is Friday. The weekend is upon us. Mm-hmm. Hopefully you have some really fun plans for this weekend, like maybe going through your gear, maybe testing your plans. And today we're putting that plan to the test.
Well, let me tell you how this works for Scott and I. We have mentioned this before, but we have an idea for a show. We talk about it briefly. We do our own prep individually, and
sometimes briefly, sometimes very
briefly. Well, yes,
it depends on the topic.
Yes, and then we hash it out here on air. So we are live on Facebook. So go ahead and check us out there. We've got the Facebook live feed going.
So we're being
streamed. Watch us there.
Streamed. We're streaming.
Strummed.
I don't know.
It's not a guitar.
I know, but
we're being streamed.
Music, and then I'm pointing at the camera, going. Oh. So yeah, we could do all kinds of fun stuff. But yeah, so we prep separately, and we do that intentionally because for you guys, the listeners, it'll make for a better conversation to listen to. But number two, which I think is more important, is it gives multiple sides to how you can approach things.
Scott and I definitely think differently. We take different approaches, and I think it's valuable for me to hear what Scott has to say, and I hope he thinks it's valuable what I have to say as well.
Absolutely. I was actually bragging you up this morning to someone I was talking to. Shane, for a lack of a really, really good way to say this.
A lot of lack there.
Is probably one of the most analytical, metric-minded preparedness people I know.
Well, we'll put that on Cash Valley, who hopefully he's listened today. Hey, Cash.
He's up there, too.
He's much more analytical than I am.
He's more analytical, but I don't get to talk to him every week.
No, we don't.
But it's a very detailed approach, right?
Well, I think it's you might consider detailed, and I would consider it myself detailed because I've gone through the process so much, and it's become so painful to make mistakes and have to redo things, and I just don't have time anymore to make a mistake, redo it, try again, get something, and go through that process that I've been able to figure out how to evaluate efficiently, I guess, for myself, and make that decision quickly and efficiently, and not have to duplicate it and reduplicate it.
But you're always evolving your stuff. That's my pet peeve of you. You change gear like
I do.
Nobody else I know, because you're like, ooh, this is better. I need that. And so, but then you keep the other one too, so you've got redundancy, which is fantastic.
And some people may call it flip-flopping, right?
Well, no, because it's evolving. It's flip-flopping is switching sides on a perspective or a policy, right?
It's not flip-flopping. It's evolving.
It's evolving.
And I acknowledge that sometimes I'm wrong, and things need improving. And when I figure that out and I learn that aspect of it, I gradually make that change. Sometimes it's dramatic, and sometimes it's very, very gradual.
It does never feel gradual. I feel like you do it really fast. I'm like, dang, you're on it.
Well, let's see who's on line 4
here.
Let's
take line 1, see who's talking to us.
Hello, you're live here on Prepper Talk Radio. You have a question or comment for us?
Hey, this is Cash.
Hey, Cash.
Hey,
I knew you were listening.
Other analytical, the more analytical.
What did you have to say for us?
Sorry?
Are you there? Can you have something for us?
I'm here.
Hey.
You got me now.
All right, cool. What's your comment for us there today, Cash?
Well, I don't have a comment yet. I just wanted to hang out.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, all right. You're on the line.
All right.
We'll leave you.
We'll keep you on live.
So today, here's the topic, and it's kind of fun that Cash is here because he's actually more knowledgeable about it than we are. So this is going to be sweet. So today's topic is more along the lines of prepping 202. I want you guys to think a little more advanced, but we're going to talk about grid down scenarios. Now you can dress it up however you want to, but grid down can happen any number of ways. Most likely is localized through no fault of your own. Somebody either hit a transformer, went out, or maybe the electrical line got cut off for a little while. But there could be a number of different things that cause that. And then all the way up to the bigger things like a cyber attack, which is going to hit larger areas. It may just hit one certain metropolitan area, all the way up to a national event, or the worst of which, in my opinion, could be EMPs.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that our listeners chose the grid down scenario because I think I rehashed the financial collapse a little bit too much. And so grid down, I think, is quite a bit more expansive than just saying EMP or terrorist event or what have you. So I think I really like the grid down because I think it's all the same, whether it's an EMP or whatever happens. When we're grid down without power, without electricity, it is a lot more impactful than you might think initially. What are your thoughts, Cash?
End result is the same.
Exactly.
Yeah, the outcomes fall in line. Pretty much any SHTF scenario or feces hitting the vertical oscillator scenario, right? No matter how you slice and dice it, how it's approached, you can have the basic same outcomes. And so putting your plan to work is kind of the focus of today's conversation. So let's throw this first scenario out. You're at home.
Yeah, and we want to break this down into, I think, three different actionable steps, but in three different scenarios. I don't know if I call them scenarios, but three different realms of prepping. Being at home, call it the bug-in or the shelter-in-place, whether you're traveling to your bug-out location, being the second, or if you're traveling in your everyday business. How do you deal with a grid-down situation when you're traveling? And then third, we're calling it camping because it's a little more friendly than saying maybe bugging out or otherwise. We can practice this and make it practical with camping.
Well,
that's something we've all done.
Camping's a great way to practice it. Camping's a great way to practice all of your preparedness skills, right? But let's go back. Let's start basics, right? Everyone has a place they call home, whether it's a house, apartment, condo, a tent, a lean-to, whatever it is you call home.
Trailer, RV.
Trailer, RV. We had Fowler on a few weeks ago, and he lived in a yurt for quite a time. So whatever that is, whatever your situation is, a grid down may be completely life-changing. It may be just a disruption. So I want you to stop for a second and look at your plan and say, okay, what do I do first when a grid down scenario happens? Let's ask Cash. What is your first response when the power suddenly goes out? What's your process flow?
My process is I apply modularity to survival. And first thing, say I'm sleeping, I'd roll out of bed, grab a bag that I call a turnout bag, just like firefighters have a turnout bag. That contains everything I need to get ready. So first, you have to make sure you're good. Then you make sure everybody in your home is good. And then you can, from there, start going out to your neighborhood and so on.
So kind of like when you're on a plane, if the airbags drop down, you put the airbag on, air mask.
Airbags. We got a head-on crash up in the air.
Oxygen mask, you put that on first, and then you help the person next to you, right?
Absolutely, because unless you're good, you can't help anybody else. So if you just become another casualty, you're no good.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So it's almost the same when you look at the CERT approach, right? With CERT, it's check, verify, make sure you're safe and your family's safe, then check your neighbors.
Exactly.
And they've simplified now the door hanger process. They used to have a bunch of different colors. Now they just have red and green. If it's red, check in. But it's a triage situation, right? If it's minor, basically you want to just keep going down the street and find out what everyone's situation is, and then go back to the most major and focus on the most major, and then address it all the way back till everybody's resolved.
And I guess go ahead. Sorry.
So if it's red, you need help. If it's green, we're okay.
And I guess applying this to a grid down situation is where we're trying to focus today, right? That's not as an impactful initially, right? The initial grid down event is not a catastrophe right off the bat.
It's just like any other power outage, unless you're on oxygen or something.
Okay.
But it'd be just like any other scenario. So you'd want to secure your home first. Once you know everybody's okay, then start looking. Okay, is the power just out in my house, or is it out in my whole neighborhood? Then is it out in my whole city? And going from there.
Yeah, and I think the first step that you mentioned is not usually my first step. Like you say, secure your home. And I think that has a lot of aspects into securing your home, from knowing where your your children are, where your family is, and how to get them back to your home, to actually securing your home and making it physically strong, safe, and resilient.
Well, there's layers, right? Mm-hmm. There's layers of protection. Securing your home, like for me, my house is always locked, whether I'm there or I'm not. Mm-hmm. All the doors are locked. Windows are typically closed and locked. That's the beauty of air conditioning. Open the window long enough to get some fresh air in, move on, right? But for me, the first thing I do is I verify. I check to see, okay, power's out, phone still works. And I think the reason I do that is I'm always banking on an EMP. I don't know if that's a good banking. I'm hedging against, right?
Okay, that's more likely in your scenario,
right? Yeah, that's more of a bigger deal, right? When the power goes out and the power just goes out, what's the injury that's going to happen right away, right? Mm-hmm. If it's an EMP, what are the injuries that are going to happen right away? And we don't fully know because we haven't fully tested in the United States, so we don't have all the data. So there's theories. Planes will fall from the sky. There's theories. Yep. Cars will all stall.
And I'm sure Cash has plenty to say on this topic.
Sure.
But with an EMP, if it is an EMP, you're going to have more things not working, theoretically. Right? You'll be able to test and validate and verify. Yeah. So if you do have someone in the home that's on oxygen, right? First I verify. I see, is this pretty localized? Is it a bigger issue than not? I look out the windows. I see, are there lights on further away? Because then I can get an idea right off the bat how responsive I need to get quickly.
Well, what you're trying to determine here is the scope.
Yeah, the scope. Good.
And the scope, there are a couple of things with the scope is don't be overzealous and right off the bat and trying to determine the scope, because people today are kind of information addicted, and you'll notice on the rule of threes, you don't see the news on the rule of threes, because you can live a long time without information before you'll die from lack of information.
You have a point there.
And sometimes people risk their lives trying to get information when they would have been just fine.
Well, see, that's part of my point is I look out the window, I'll check my phone, and that's the length and height and breadth of how far I go for my verify. My wife, when we're doing the same thing, she does the same thing, but she'll check Facebook because you can usually get updates faster on Facebook than anywhere else because your local community, right? But if that's down, then we know, okay, it's a little more severe, and now once we're secure, I should go check on my neighbors.
And it also definitely depends on whether it is an EMP or if it's just simply a grid down, regardless of whatever that cause is, that, okay, if our devices are not damaged, I can turn the generator on, right? I can hook up to my battery bank and do a lot of different things to get some of those important things back online quickly. But in an EMP, that can't necessarily be done unless you've taken steps to harden or protect those your generator, your electrical devices and such.
But going back to the planning and acting out, right? First I verify, then I go secure or double check my security. Make sure at the same time part of secure is making sure everyone is safe, nobody's injured in my immediate family and in my group, in my household, right? That's where I really start. That's step one and step two.
Yep.
Perfect.
All right, and there's our music. Thanks for listening to us here on Prepper Talk Radio. We're talking about Prepping 202, how to apply the many things we've talked about over the years to a grid down scenario. So come back and join us after the break. We'll continue this conversation. Welcome back to the show. You're listening to Shane and Scott here on Prepper Talk Radio, as well as our guest, the Cache Valley Prepper. Cache, you still there?
I am.
All right, cool. Today we are talking about the practical application of prepping. We're calling it Prepping 202, and our scenario is a grid down scenario, regardless of the cause of the grid down. How we apply our preps,
right?
Our plans, our preps to an actual scenario. And so we've got Cash helping us out with the grid down, as he is a specialist on EMPs and so forth. And so that is why he is joining us today, and we appreciate it. And, of course, we want your comments, your
thoughts,
experience,
your processes,
your questions, in particular to grid down, because we can very easily miss something. Our brains are going all over the place trying to enlighten and also make sense of it ourselves. This is where I work out a lot of my plans is right here on the air, talking with you guys. So you can call us at 801-254-1640.
Let me correct that. This is where you revise
a
lot of your plans.
Yes.
And I do the same thing.
Especially when you and I are talking together.
Yeah, because I'll change my ideas because you'll bring up a good point, or Cash brings up a good point.
Right.
I'm like, oh, I forgot about that, or I didn't put enough attention towards that. And like in the prior segment, Cash pointed out, you could die of trying to find out the information, but not having information won't kill you, right? So it's prioritization. What am I going to do next? Right?
And there might be an argument there saying, okay, if you don't have the right information, you can't make the right decisions, and thus that may kill you.
Right.
And I'm sure Cash would agree with me on that.
But going too far
don't take on unnecessary risk.
Right.
Yes.
So going too far to get that information is a detriment because you've got other priorities that are way higher on the list.
Nobody dies from listening to the radio.
Yeah, that's exactly what you mean.
But texting while you drive, that's another story.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've verified, quick verification. You don't need to go great depths, but just kind of gauge, is this power out? Is this what's going on? Then you secure. Check your family, make sure everyone's okay. Whoever you cohabitate with, make sure the building's still secure. And then what's your next step, Shane?
I guess my next step would be to, after making contact with my kids, trying to coordinate getting back to the home base, wherever that may be, and then securing it against whatever potential there might be. It's really going to greatly vary depending on where you live. I live in a really nice suburb, on the border of Forest Service property, so I'm pretty secure place. So I feel very careful about that. Then I think at that point I'm going to say, okay, let's double check and see where I am situationally in the way of water storage, food storage, and the things I would need to survive a long-term event, because that's where my brain goes. These short-term events, we experience them from time to time, but the long-term ones are what are really going to impact us.
So I actually have an action list for grid-down scenarios.
Okay, cool.
So as soon as I've verified and secured, then we have renters in our basement apartment, and the plumbing has to go through a sump pump to come back out. So my first thing is to get downstairs and let them know, stop using your bathroom, use the bathrooms upstairs. That way we don't have a backup, we don't have a bigger problem.
That's definitely critical right there.
So that's hugely critical. The other thing is I have a neighbor who's on oxygen, so I check in on them. I'm also the emergency preparedness coordinator for my ward, so we break out our radios. That's next on the list also.
Right.
Communicate to everyone, find out what's going on, deliver the messages, and have all the block captains, which each block captain has 5 to 6 homes they're in charge of. They or someone else they can delegate to will go then check on those 5 houses to make sure everybody's okay. Because if there is someone who has a medical condition or has oxygen, like my neighbor, they need to be checked on. You need to make sure they've got a backup, that you've got ways to get them oxygen or whatever they may need. At the same time, there's things on my list such as water procurement. Depending on the severity of the power outage, all the water pressurization is going to be gone.
Yeah, let's talk about water for a little bit here, because that on our in survival rules of 3, number 1 is shelter. Kind of already have that covered here by being at home. Hopefully we're at home when this event happens.
Right.
If not, we have to talk about our topic number 2, travel, how to get back to our home base, and how it relates to our radius principle. And then, what water do you have? Kind of like I was leading into. Okay, what's your how much water do you have stored? How long is it going to last you? What condition is it in? And how are you going to get more? Because that is our survival rules of 3. Number 1, shelter. Number 2, water. Number 3, food. And I have number 4 as safety, as security. Kind of as Cash started to talk about. Okay, let's make sure everyone's secure, everyone's safe, and that may very well be your very first step in this type of event. Do you guys agree?
I'm waiting for Cash.
Okay. Yeah, I like Scott have an immediate action list, and so I go to the checklist because anytime an event like this happens, you have all kinds of adrenaline flowing, and you're not going to be able to remember. So in my turnout bag, I have checklists. Actually, in my pocket, I carry a notebook I call it a survival field book, and it's got my immediate action list. So whether I'm home, in a power outage like this, you might not even be at home.
Mm-hmm.
There's average American has a 50% chance of being at home, 25% chance of being at work, and a 25% chance of being somewhere else. So your actions are going to depend on where you are. So your first action might be, I have to get home. 50% chance for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
From there, then you start ticking things off down the checklist.
And I think the important aspect of this is that you have that checklist. You have a written plan and not just a thought process.
Right, because you're not going to be able to remember anything.
Especially if it's a stressful situation, yeah. Maybe with a grid down, when initially it's not necessarily chaotic at first.
Right.
You should be able to...
Maybe,
exactly.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that written plan where you've spent that time to not only write it down on paper, but evaluate and then reevaluate and then change and adapt and modify, kind of like we're doing here talking on the radio, then it may not do you much good.
Grid down could be very slow onset, too.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on why, the reason, there could be all kinds of chaos, or everybody could just be standing around saying, "Oh, what's up?
What's
Car's
going on?"
out.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, it'll come back on in a little while." And as the hours and days go by, then they start to figure things out. So there might be a large gap or a small gap where you can get gasoline, you can get prescriptions with cash, you can go around doing all kinds of things and working toward your list. But if you go down the list and start verifying, okay, this is a wide scope event, the radio is also down, and my cell phone's also down, pretty soon you got it figured out. This is a large scope thing. This isn't going to be over anytime soon.
So yeah, let's talk about that real quick. Is that, like you're saying, 50% chance that we're not going to be at home when an event happens?
For the average American.
For the average American. Let's pray that that's not the case. And so the first action item would be to say, okay, let's get back to the home base.
Well, I think more than praying, it's, okay, you can pray for whatever you want to. 95.99% of the time, in my experience, my preparedness is answer to the prayers that I would have been saying.
Okay.
Right?
Perfect, yeah.
So when we take that responsibility upon ourselves, and we utilize the Ready Radius, where we have our everyday carry, we have our bag that'll get us home in that kind of a disaster or scenario. More often than not, 50% chance of us that we're not going to be home when that happens. What's in your car?
Yeah, exactly. That's where I was getting to.
What's with you when you're going out?
Exactly.
Cash mentioned you've got a turnout kit right by your bed. I think that's brilliant. I hadn't thought of that. I've got shoes, I've got clothes, I've got like an outfit ready to go, but I don't have a turnout kit.
My nightstand would be my turnout bag.
Yeah, and it can be anything. It could be an EDC valet, it could be a turnout bag, but the idea is that some kind of container, just like a firefighter. When a firefighter gets ready out of a turnout bag, he doesn't have to remember anything because as soon as the bag's empty, he's good to go. Because everything he needed to deploy was in that bag.
That's brilliant.
Bag empty, you're good. You didn't forget anything. And for us survivalists, sometimes we have things that we can't duplicate and have in the bag, like passports or ID or wallet or something. And those, I resolve that problem by having a short checklist to make sure that I gathered up my EDC items as well. But when I take those off, they go right in the EDC valet. So it's pretty
nice,
no-brainer.
Now, here's a thought: can we be over? What's the right word? Can we? I wouldn't say over-prepared. Can we overthink this a little bit?
Oh yeah.
Or
Absolutely.
If we practice this every day, this becomes like you and I, and I'm sure you, Cash. We have our routine every day. Okay, this is the stuff I have on me every day. This is my EDC stuff. I got my little pocket survival kit and the things I carry in my bag. It's become a habit to me, and so I don't have to necessarily think about it as where I'm going to open my book and I'm going to go through my checklist here. Can we overthink it sometimes?
Absolutely. But
Sure.
I would rather overthink it in the preparation phase than get to the situation, and having never thought about it, never practiced it, now I've got to implement something and I don't know where to go. So if I take the time beforehand to action plan it out, and I go to my action checklist when something happens, now I'm going to be like, oh, dude, I could put together a really nice little tool belt that I've always got by my bed that's ready to go, that's more advanced than my current EDC, but it's specific to, okay, if something does happen, grab that in addition. I'm kind of geeking out about it because I can overthink that very easily, but I think that's going to be one of my new projects is a simple tool, like I'm going to put my radio on it that I use for the ward for my calling, right? I'm going to be able to bring all the tools that I need and all the contact list for everyone else I need to get a hold of in that scenario. I'm going to have those on there as well, and I'm going to copy that list and that action list and provide it to everybody else in that group, right? So they know what to do, how to do it.
Now, I know that, Cash, you're a big proponent of whatever you need, make sure you have it on you, on your person, not in a bag, not stashed somewhere else. And so you have kind of developed a lot of little things that are specific to what you can carry on every day and not make a big impact to your life. Am I stating that correctly?
Yes, and there's no need to overcomplicate it. I mean, it's just how I simplify it is with modularity. I think in modules. So what Scott's talking about, hey, you could have a little tool belt. For me, I do have that, but it's in modules. So
right.
One example would be, I have a home defense pouch, which has everything I would need to deal with a home intruder situation like that. So if I hear a bump in the night, I just strap on a little waist pack. It's not like a bat belt or a full-on, tactical vest or anything. It's just a little fanny pack type thing.
For those of us that grew up in the 80s and 90s, a fanny pack. It is awesome. They have reemerged, and they're popular again, but they are super easy to make a modular kit out of.
No, that's true.
It's just got, a small trauma kit and my light and my pistol and a spare mag and a knife and, a cell phone. What I would need to deal with that situation. Because when I'm sleeping, I'm not carrying concealed while I'm in bed.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I am.
All right. More power to him.
He's got his holster tucked into his underwear. Unlike the rest of us.
But it's rare that you'll ever find me without it.
He showers with it in the window so that he's safe at all times. I'm kidding. But okay, so let's go back to
water a little bit.
Okay.
Since that's like right next to shelter, it's water, right? So we always advocate. Go ahead.
Cities that will affect the water pressure. Some
yes,
won't.
Exactly. Depends on where you live.
A lot of people are surprised to hear that most of New York City wouldn't lose water pressure.
And why is that?
They have water tanks on the top of every building.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, the large buildings would lose it up above about the third floor. But most of the rest of New York City wouldn't, just because most of the water system runs on just natural pressure.
Gravity pressure.
Gravity. Right.
But they do have to pump it to the top of these buildings.
Right.
So eventually it would lose water pressure.
Things.
For short-term situations, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
Long-term,
very short.
So what should be your first thing you do once you realize, the power's out? I've already educated myself as to where my water comes from. Mm-hmm. I know that it comes from a tank which is located higher than where we live, and so we're going to get water by gravity. We don't require any pumps to get water to my home. What should be the first step?
Well, how does water get to that tank?
Well, it does get pumped there, so that tank will eventually
when that tank's
run
gone,
dry.
It's gone.
So what I'm alluding to is, okay, maybe your first thought and your first action item should be, okay, let's fill all the tubs. If we don't already have the water we need for a couple of weeks, let's fill some more jugs, some more containers for the water we might we don't know how long this is going to last.
So I would argue against filling all the tubs.
Okay.
I'd like to have one tub left that I can use to wash in, or if you've got a shower, take a bucket of water with you into the shower and use that and sponge clean, right?
Okay. Yeah, I guess the point is come up with a plan.
Come up with a plan. Those water bags are great because then you don't have to worry about people dropping stuff into your tub or how dirty the tub might be when you fill it with water. because you want to eliminate as much treatment of that water after you've captured it. You don't want to have to keep treating it just to be able to use it.
And what Scott's saying is that there are these bags. You can go to Amazon, and it's a bag that is the shape of your tub. You fill it up while it's in your tub, and it is a big water bladder.
Yeah, you can get them at Amazon, Emergency Essentials.
Very cool little device. And
the first one was called the Water Bob.
Water Bob, there you go.
Yep.
And so that's I think my first one of my very first action items after accounting for my family and those types of things. If I don't have to travel to get home, is deal with the water, because that's a very difficult thing to deal with. Is how do you get more water after you run out and after the water tanks run out? What's next? What's next on your lists?
Depends on your level of preparation. I think a lot of our listeners would have to kind of take stock and do an inventory of what they have and see what they need.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of other people that are more prepared, perhaps, they can virtually sleep when the wind blows.
Mm-hmm.
When power's out. Well, I have everything I need because I've already prepared for this.
Yep.
But even they may have a few things like medication that they, need to grab.
Yep. All right, there's our music. We'll come back to this, continue on this topic, and try and squeeze in a little bit more after the commercial break. Please listen to and visit our sponsors' websites. We are very grateful for them and for their support of the entire channel. Thanks for listening to us on Prepper Talk Radio. We'll catch you guys after the commercial break. All right, we're going to get right back into this. Thanks for holding over the break with us, and thanks for supporting our sponsors. We are going to not switch up. We're going to take a little bit of a twist here. We've been talking prepping 202 in a grid down scenario, and we've been talking mostly short-term scenario items. Let's turn our attention towards more of a long-term grid down, where we would go from here, since we only have one segment left, and we're not even touching
16 minutes to go.
All the topics we were hoping to touch upon.
Well, we're still putting in our plan, right? Mm-hmm. Now our plan also assesses: is this short term or long term? Doesn't really matter in my plan, because I've already planned out everything for the next, say it's a 3-month scenario. Mm-hmm. I've got everything, so it's the same for a 3-month scenario, or the same for a 3-hour scenario, right? My next thing is I check my gas line to make sure that's still intact and everything's still good, and I grab my alternate means of cooking.
Okay.
So that we're not skipping meals, right? And
as the grid down situation continues on, is more long term. Okay, time to make dinner. The ovens, our electric oven's not working. Mm-hmm. Sure, maybe you have propane.
If you've got gas,
if you got gas, that's probably still going to work. But you still have to wait a lot.
Gas will work at first.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Those gas lines are pressurized by pumps.
By electric pumps.
Yep.
Right.
That's why I check the gas line.
They're maintained by programmable logic controllers.
All run on the grid, correct? All internet, usually internet based, all software based.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're called SCADA controllers. And they just every valve, people don't drive down and turn valves, anymore. They tap into the network and do it with computer. And that's a problem, is that all these systems, whether it's fuel or food production, food distribution, healthcare, banking, it's all automated.
Yeah, exactly. If you go down to the grocery store. So probably one of the next things I would do is, okay, I'm set here at home. There's a few things we could use, like a gallon of milk or something like that. Let's run down to the store, see what I can get in still short term.
Yep. Here's what I would recommend. Grab your stack of cash that you've got sitting aside, but also take a calculator.
There you go.
Or paper and pen, because likelihood of you getting down there and them not being able to process your order because everything's electronic there, or they may say, "Oh, you can't come in unless it's middle of the day with lots of light." That's one thing I like about Walmart is they've got all these skylights, so you can still go in there if the power goes out. But they're not smart enough to process an order without the power, so you've got to be able to write it all out, work it out with them,
and convince them to take your cash.
Convince them to take the cash. So you got to be a good salesperson. But the likelihood of being able to do that in a long-term scenario, that's going to turn into a bad scenario very fast when people realize, well, I can't get anything. All my money's stuck on my card. I can't get anything.
You'd have a better chance with a small business and
Yep.
a big business with a lot of rules.
So then you go to
I think we
the
all
mom
know
and pop
those
places.
local grocery stores that are smaller chains, like, say, the Ridley's, for example.
Okay. Or think smaller. I like to think smaller. I
Okay.
think
I don't
like,
know that I have anything smaller.
Well, gas stations,
Okay.
right? The little mom and pop gas stations have more stuff there than less.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, they've got milk there. And
but your Chevron, you're going to have nothing, right? Because they never have anything there. But like your Maverick's got quite a bit, right? You can still get a gallon of milk. You can still get some other stuff, and it's easier to get in and out and access. Everyone else is going to be thinking grocery store,
Walmart,
grocery store, grocery store.
Yeah.
I'm going to be thinking, just like Cash said, I'm going to be thinking the small places. You know, one of my favorite like post-apocalypse like ways to get food.
You told me this. I'm trying to remember now. Tell me.
I've mapped out where all the long-term food storage warehouses are in Utah.
Right.
And I've also
Food
mapped out
distribution
where
warehouses.
Yep,
Such.
food distribution. I've also mapped out where
restaurant supply stores.
restaurant supply stores. I've also mapped out where all the Home Depots and the Lowe's and all those, because they have food there. They have the sodas and chips and all that other stuff. It's not, hey, I want to eat this all day every day, but it's like, okay, they're less likely for everyone else to think of them as a priority until now that I'm telling everybody on the radio. But there's places like that would be beneficial to know about. Beneficial to be able to take some cash down there and be like, hey, here we go.
Yeah, I know your power's out, but hey, I got some cash. What can I buy?
Very quickly, in a long-term scenario, we'll come to a point where we won't be able to solve our survival problems with money.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything will turn into trade, barter, and be careful for your life.
And I think it'll come to, we try and not be as doomsday as possible here on the show. But a long term could be, 1 week, 2 weeks. That's an intense long term grid down scenario. That's, nobody's going to work. I can't do my work without the internet. All my work is based, is online.
Yeah, it's all phones and all internet based. So that's
and
gone.
I can't visit my customers if they don't have power in their facilities. Cash?
It could be something like an EMP could be a lot longer term than that, though.
Right.
Yeah, now we're talking 6 months or more.
Replacing damaged circuits and so forth. And I guess the main weakness in an EMP situation, tell me if I'm wrong, Cash, is that it is the actual grid itself. It's not necessarily electronics, but it is the grid itself becoming damaged by an EMP, our actual power supply system. Is that correct?
Yes, it's the very large step-down and step-up transformers. And these things, they're custom built. They're not, every one of them is custom built. And you guys need to understand that they have a lead time in years. And they involve large quantities of rare earth metals. And a few years back, we had 0 plants in the U.S. who could build them.
Yep.
Now I believe we have 2.
Well, there's some towns are smart enough that they'll order multiple of the transformers.
The smaller ones.
The smaller ones. Like when I lived in California, I lived in Garden Grove.
Yeah.
Garden Grove had small transformers in a warehouse. And every time there was a power issue, they were able to pull these transformers out and replace them. California, they have the rolling blackout issue was so huge a decade and a half ago, right? But that would cause problems for the transformers. It would cause problems for the lines. It would cause problems for the homes. And so they were like, because of this, when we have money, let's get more stuff. And that's thanks to Southern California Edison for getting those redundancies, but also thanks to Southern California Edison for not managing the lines correctly to be able to give energy to everybody all the time. So you also have to think about, okay, what are my energy sources? When those are gone, what do I do?
And what are your critical needs at home?
Like, do I just turn my generator on all the time? No, absolutely not. A lot of people think, well, I'll turn on my generator and charge all my devices.
And let it run everything in the house.
Yeah, and that's not sustainable. How much fuel do you have, or do you have solar panel backup? If you're grid tied, you're not going to get as much juice as you hope you'd get because it's going to be pushing back out to the grid.
Well,
Note on generators, definitely with generators, if you have a generator, look into getting a dual or tri-fuel conversion kit because running on gas is extremely expensive.
And I still consider generators a short-term.
Yeah.
Short-term
but even
item.
for a few weeks, it's onerous.
Terribly difficult, yeah, to run a generator for a couple of weeks with the fuel and such.
Yeah, I've got
About
a dual fuel.
$1,600 a month in fuel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess depending on the size of your generator, what you're trying to power. Of course, my first thought is, okay, I'm going to get the fridge and freezer plugged in, right? So I can use those contents as needed and not, okay, we've got to hurry and use these first before they go bad.
But do you have a rule on usage of the fridge and freezer after in a grid down scenario? Because most fridges and freezers only run a couple times a day, right? Or
They're like
more,
a
depending on
third.
how oftentimes they're opened.
I think they're considered like a third duty. So a third of an hour they're run, it'll be off the other 2/3.
And the more energy
Freezers
efficient,
are a little more.
yeah,
Chest
it's
freezers are a little more efficient.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
The more efficient it is, the less it actually runs. My grandma has an old Frigidaire, like old, like it's probably 80 years old. Like I mean, it's I don't know how old
Constantly
it is.
runs.
Well, no, it runs once a day.
Really?
That's it. But it runs for an hour, and then it turns off. Doesn't run again
Deep
until the
freeze.
next day. And so she knows every day it goes on, she'll see all the lights in the house dim because that thing's kicking on. It uses a ton of power when it runs, but it stays cold. But that's because she doesn't use it every day.
Okay, so we know that most people, and I think most is we're generalizing it, upwards of 70% of families out there have less than a week's worth of food in their home. And
Statistically, across the United States, in 2007, 50% of the United States did not have a 3-day supply of food in their home.
I was stretching out a little bit. So
It's
like
gotten
upwards
worse.
of 75% have less than 5 days.
Yeah.
So
Less than 2% are engaged in any type of food production.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so for long-term food, once the grocery stores are out, which they will be out within, technically it's 2 to 3 days, but very possibly the same day. You won't have the ability to go down to the grocery store and get more food. So we talk about food storage. It's kind of a boring topic, but when it comes to grid down, it may not be your first thought is, okay, if we have an extended event here, where am I going to get my food? And that's where your food
Very
storage
quickly, it'll be the gold standard of barter.
Yep, absolutely. And we all like gold and silver, and I think there'll be and I hope there'll be a place for it in the future to where we can use that to build our supplies, because that's my purpose of gold and silver, is to get more stuff with it when its value increases. But yeah, you're absolutely right. When we get to the point where food is the most important thing, water and food, that's where I think security also needs to be stepped up at that time for this long-term type of event.
Well, and anyone knows that you have resources, knows that you can be used to get those resources from, right? And so you've got to have your security stepped up at that point. You also need to have a community that's going to rally around together, and to be training that community, and hopefully have a moral compass for that community to be able to rally together to get through whatever's coming, whatever's happening, whatever's going on, right? In a long-term scenario, you're going to be relying on neighbors. You're going to be creating work groups to do gardening. But you also have to think of what time of year is this happening? How are you staying warm?
Absolutely. Big consideration.
If it's the middle of the winter and we have a power outage, like we did 2 years ago in Bountiful, power outage that lasted a couple of days, what do you do?
In that situation, fuel would be more important than food.
That's true. Initially, yeah, absolutely.
And you'd consume it very, very quickly. Well, you can also do things to, like for sleeping arrangements, set up a pop tent in the main room. Everybody gets inside that tent where there's an additional layer of insulation. Throw some blankets over it. But you've got to be ready, and you have to have your plan together now. Because if you don't have it and you're not practicing it, this weekend would be great. If you don't have plans already, I would practice a grid down scenario this weekend. Turn the power off. Obviously talk to your spouse, make sure they're okay, but turn the power off, let the kids figure it out, and you put your plan to pace. See if it really will get you through.
It's harder than you will think it will be if you haven't done it before, and you're not. And it'll definitely show the weaknesses in your plan, the weak links in your plan. And just as a side note, I think winter is definitely going to be much harder to deal with a power outage than summer. And I think one thing that each of us can do, if I have a gas fireplace in my home, I am going to be swapping that out for a wood burning fireplace. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but I'm going to find somebody who will trade me straight across gas insert for wood burning stove. And that can be a very easy and efficient way to heat your entire house in the winter.
Absolutely. And you got, like you said, gas. You could have a gas insert in the wood-burning fireplace.
That's true. That's true. If you have it right set up, you can have the gas insert, and that can work for, like you say, a couple of days as long as the lines are being charged with your natural gas.
Yeah.
Or
I'm actually converting my fireplace to gas insert, so I can just pull it back out when I need to.
Yeah, if you have that option, yeah.
Then you're multi-fuel.
Yay!
There you go. Or wood pellet stoves; those are fantastic. But they do require some electricity for the auger and for the ignition system and so forth, and the fans and such, which can be accomplished with a small solar power system, backup battery system. And there's our music. And of course, we never have enough time to get through our topic. Cash, thanks for joining us and helping us out with this topic. We always enjoy talking with you and your insightful, very detailed comments. Everybody, thanks for listening to Prepper Talk Radio. Be sure to interact with us on Facebook and social media. We sure enjoy that. And we'll be back next week with another fantastic topic.
Booyah.